There are a lot of competitions for creative writing of all genres, and a lot of people enter them. So if you want to maximise your possibilities of actually winning, there are a few things that you definitely need to know. The first thing to think about is eligibility, because, okay, maybe you found a poetry competition and you're a poet. You naturally think you could apply, you can send your work in, but maybe they're only looking for sonnets and you write haiku or you write free verse. There's no point sending a work that isn't the standard, isn't the sort of thing that they're looking for. And there's also your own eligibility, because some of them will have a certain geographical limitation, or they'll want someone who's never been published before, or they'll want a certain demographic. So first thing is check your eligibility, both your own eligibility and that of your work. Having checked your eligibility and the eligibility of your work, you are already in there reading the rules. And reading the rules is fundamental, because it isn't just about what kind of writing, what kind of people. There's a lot more to it. And some of those rules are really, really tight and strict. And they want you to send your text with margins that are this big, and they want it in Times New Roman 12 point, or they don't. But they specify down to the last detail of what they want. And it's important to check that, because if they do, then there's no point sending something else, because they have every right to take your money and not actually look at your work, to just simply disqualify it. And you won't get your money back if it's said in the rules that it had to be of a certain kind, that it had to be in a certain format, and you enter it. That's your money just completely down the drain. You should think very hard about which piece you're going to send, because everybody else who's entering the competition is going to be sending their best work. Now, your work may be very good and it may be publishable, but that doesn't mean that it is the best. Look through your files and find the one or the ones that you actually think are competition worthy, not just publishable. One thing you can do to maximise your chances is to look at who the judge is going to be, because a lot of the respected competitions will actually publish who they're going to have judging each of the different categories that they've got in their competition. And if you can see that the person who's judging the short stories is themselves a science fiction writer, well, that probably gives you a clue that perhaps they'd like science fiction. There's no guarantee, but it may help. Certainly someone who's only ever published literary short stories and literary novels is probably not going to favour horror and other genre writing. They may, there's no guarantee, but it's worth thinking about what is going to appeal to the judge. Another thing that you need to think about and take into account is the theme, because there are a lot of open competitions and you can send in any work you like. And then there are others that have a theme. And if they've got a theme, your piece of writing has got to suit it in some way. That doesn't mean that you have to use the title, that the title of your piece has to be the same as the themes. That is definitely not necessary, unless they say a piece with this title. If they just say a general theme, maybe it's a theme about thankfulness or water, you don't have to write a piece called thankfulness or a piece called water, but there must be something in your writing that links to that theme. Now, I personally like themed competitions, because I think that if it comes down to the final two, and one of them, I mean, they're equally good pieces of writing, but one of them suits the theme better than the other, then actually that's a way that the judge is going to be able to say, this one wins this competition. So I think there's more of a comparison like for like, but other people just prefer open competitions. That's very much a preference, a personal preference. every competition has a deadline. And it's really, really important to know what that deadline is and get your writing ready in time. You don't have to send it off. I mean, some competitions are open for maybe 3 months. You don't have to send it off at the very beginning of that 3 months, but you need to leave enough time so that if there's a technical hitch, your computer decides to restart when you're sending your entry in, that actually you don't miss the deadline because of that. One of the advantages of writing something early and not sending it is that it gives you time to leave it to one side and then come back and edit it, come back and reread it, make changes. You'll have more objectivity. And also it will be better, it will be easier to proofread something that isn't very immediate. And proofreading's fundamental because where you're sending something to a publication, then yes, you might get an editor who's going to say, oh, you could make it a little bit better, you could change this little bit. But that's not what a judge is going to do. A judge is going to take, this is the piece of writing they're working with. And if it's full of typographical mistakes, if it's got any kind of mistake in it, that's one thing that's going to push it down the list a little bit. So make sure you've got time for that proofreading. Once you've sent in your competition entry, don't then sit twiddling your thumbs waiting to find out what the results are. The judging process can take a long time. So get on and look for another piece of writing that you can work on. Get on and look for another competition you can enter. Eventually, you'll get into this rhythm of entering competitions, working on other things, entering more competitions. And at some point, eventually, one of those competitions that you entered months ago, you're going to get the news that you've won. But if you just sit and wait, well, the first few you probably won't win. It's still good experience, but you probably won't win. So you're just going to be sitting there waiting for bad news. You never know. Maybe you do win, but there's no guarantee. So keep working on other things. Of course, if you're working on other things, you're sending out lots of competition entries, you're sending other things to be published elsewhere, you've got an awful lot of things going on, an awful lot of paperwork, even if it's on your computer, not on paper, and you need to keep track. Make sure you keep records, because one of the things about competitions and also other publications is that they often ask for things that haven't been published, that haven't been sent out to other places at that same time. And at some point, if you lose track, you are liable to send in something that wasn't eligible because it had already been placed, or you were waiting for news and it hadn't come through, and then suddenly you get notified that you're a winner and it's already sitting on somebody else's desk. So good record keeping is essential. One final thing to take into account when you're entering all these competitions is that normally sending your work to a publisher, sending your work to an agent, sending it in for publication doesn't cost you anything. They don't normally have a reading fee, but competitions normally have a cost attached to them. And although that may only be a few dollars, a few pounds, it's not very much. If you do a lot of competition entering, then it will add up. So do step back and check and make sure that you are not sending in hundreds of competition entries and not winning anything. If that's the case, you need to step back and find out if there is something you can do. Those hundreds of dollars or pounds that you're paying on competition entries would probably be better spent on taking a course. So watch your budget. It's fine. It's your money. You're a writer, and entering competitions is part of being a writer. But do make sure that you're sticking to your budget. So there are lots of reasons for entering competitions. There are lots of competitions to enter. If you win, you'll get good publicity. If you may even get publication, but you'll also be part of the writing community. And a lot of what goes on, a lot of the success involved for writers is being part of that community. So get in there, start entering those competitions, and good luck.